Hey there, ghosties. Welcome to episode 75 of the Ghost Lights podcast. Today's guest is William Missouri Downs, famed playwright, sitcom writer, author, and all around just honest soul. I was so thankful to have him on tonight. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please stay tuned. We will be taking next week off, so you have plenty of time to catch up on all 75 episodes. We're on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean.com, wherever you get your podcasts from. Now, Dan, give us War by the Hypnotic Brass Ensemble. Welcome back, Ghosties. It's episode 75 of the Ghost Lights podcast, and it's your boy Sam Gilstrap. I am not the GOAT, but I do fit the description. We are back today with a man that has been a part of my life for quite a length of time since I moved back to Colorado and started studying theater. I had to read his book in my playwriting class. It's William Missouri Downs, everybody. The prolific playwright, William Missouri Downs. Bill, how the hell are you?
I'm good. Good. Happy to be in Denver.
Nice. How have you been spending the last year? Just writing and trying to wash your hands?
Yeah. I mean, for me, COVID wasn't a big deal. I'm a playwright. I'm alone all the time anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, days go by, weeks without me talking to someone else. So I hardly noticed. And since in the evenings, I hold up service stations. Wearing a mask wasn't a problem either.
Oh, good. That's really nice. Any success in the hold up department?
No, but I don't know. I'm a silly human being, so I say things like that.
I'm just as silly. So the sillier we can make this, the better. We need to have some laughs these days.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I was just going to start asking you if there's like a trajectory of places, like if I knew which gas stations to avoid over the next 24 hours. That'd be great.
The playwright's got to make a living, damn it,
Absolutely. Yeah. They're finding like pages of scripts at every location you've hit.
Yeah, basically, yes.
Nice. Well, this one's about a love triangle. I don't know what's happening here now. With the pandemic, for you as a playwright and not seeing that many people, was that muddying up your process in terms of creating dialogue during this time, or not really?
No, not at all. I plowed forward and continued writing. I write every day. I'm a super lark. I have a genetic mutation that makes me automatically wake up between 3 and 4 every morning.
Wow.
Been that way since I was a kid. I was recently studied at the University of California, which one? San Francisco. They took my blood and are looking at my DNA, trying to figure out why I wake up so early in the morning. The nickname for people like me are super larks. We get up at ungodly hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
And do you not feel fatigued throughout the day because of that?
I'm the type of person who gets out of bed and starts vacuuming. I mean, I pop up and I go. We're doing this at 7 o'clock at night. And I got to tell you, I may doze off. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try not to take it personally. I am very insecure as the podcast.
Well, I get tired early and go to bed early. And I wake
there you
up.
go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Well, hopefully you've only had the one White Claw and you're not too dozy.
That's true. I'm having a White Claw as we do this.
Nice. I'm drinking a Mexican lager from Comrade Brewery. Say Nos Vidania to your thirst, everybody. Comrade Brewing.
Drinking is a requirement if you're a playwright, but White Claw means that I'm obviously not too serious about it.
Well, you're just a classy, got like half a foot in the water of playwriting. That's all.
That's right.
You're not trying to destroy yourself.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. We're not into the like full bottles of bourbon at 1 a.m.
No
throes of writing yet. That's probably for the best.
Still going. Yeah.
So tell me, Bill, theater, how did it happen? How did your story begin?
I was listening to your podcast, and I've fallen in love with listening to people and how they come to theater. And
Mm,
with every single one of them, how they come to theater is a need, it's a cure for something that's missing in their lives.
mm,
And I have to say, it was pretty much the same with me. Although I'm jealous of all these other stories because mine was much worse. I came from a extremely violent, awful family.
mm.
Um, it was filled with a narcissists and a psychopath's lights, and there was all sorts of violence and domestic violence and physical violence and emotional violence. This is how bad my childhood was.
Mm.
It was, have you ever seen the documentary, The Last 10 Days of Hitler?
Yes.
That meets Running with Scissors. All right, that's my child. I mean, this is how bad it was. When I was a young kid, my father would come into my bedroom with
Yeah.
a shotgun and
What?
wake me up and say, give me a reason not to blow my head off, which, is kind of a lot of responsibility for a 12-year-old,
Yeah.
Yeah. So I, I,
Mm.
I grew up in a screwed up, terrible. You look up in the dictionary, you look up the playwright's childhood, and there's a
Mhm.
picture of me. I mean, that's how bad it was. Um, and I was told I was stupid. I was flunking out of high school, and I went into the counselor my junior year and said, he said, "What do you want to do if you graduate from high school?" Because if was a real possibility.
Mm.
And I said I wanted to go to college, and the counselor began laughing so hard that something came out his nose. Yeah, I had no chance whatsoever. But my senior year, I was walking down the hallway, and this guy walked up to me that I knew, and he said, "Hey, I just got cast in the community theater production, but I'm already cast in the high school production. You got to come in here and audition so I can tell the director I'm leaving the cast." And I went in and auditioned,
Mhm.
and I got the role. And I kind of liked it. So I found a little place called Northern Michigan University, way up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, in Marquette,
That's where
Michigan.
my mom went. Are you
Oh,
serious?
yes, I went to Northern Michigan
Oh
on
my God.
the snowy shores of Lake Superior. They
Yeah.
couldn't get anyone to go there. I mean, it's the most isolated place in the world, and they had a program there, try to attract students called
Mhm.
Right to Try. Yeah, what it meant was if you had, no matter what your grade point was, you could go to this university for one semester. And at the end of your first semester, if you didn't have a 2.0, a C average, you were out, no exceptions, no
Mm.
appeal. All right. So I
Wow.
went there, try to pick up women with that. What are you? I'm a Rhodes Scholar. What are you? Right to try. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Um, I walked in, and I was just turned 18. I started college a month after my 18th birthday. I had no knowledge of the world. They said, "What do you want to major in?" And I said, "I don't know." And they said, "Well, what did you enjoy in high school?" And I said, "Marching band." And they said,
Mm.
"You can't major in that." And they said, "What else?" And I said, "I was in a play." And they said, "You're a theater major." And that was it. That's how I became a theater major.
Wow.
I started thinking I might, be going to a small university, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I began thinking maybe I could become an actor. And then my junior year, I developed viral encephalitis. If everything wasn't shitty enough in my life already,
Mhm.
it's a virus of the brain. And I was just deathly ill for an entire semester. I couldn't go home. I didn't have a home to go to. So I just laid in my dorm room. And when it was over, I began noticing that I had a slight stammer,
Mm.
and aphasia would hit me now and then. I have to concentrate at moments to make sure that I don't stammer.
Mhm.
In spite of that, I got myself into an MFA program at the University of Illinois, and I was terrible. I'm surprised. I mean, people they would make fun of me because I would go up on my lines,
Mhm.
and what they didn't know was I wasn't going up on my lines, I couldn't talk. My brain would short circuit and I couldn't say the next word.
Mm.
And, in those days, today everyone is so honest. Oh, I have mental illness. I have this, I have that. I don't know. I have a goiter. Everyone is sitting there saying what their problems are. And in those days, you kept those things secret.
Yeah.
I mean, you never said anything like that. And so I never told anyone if they said you're going up on your lines, Bill goes up on his lines. That was better than saying, his brain isn't working. Well,
Yeah.
as time went on, I began to realize that acting was not going to happen. The stammer wasn't going to go away. The aphasia wasn't going to go away. When it happens, sometimes it can be so bad that I can't talk for like a minute. So I started writing dialogue. I had no training at it. And I ended up, of course, doing what all first-time playwrights do, writing about their screwed up childhood. And I wrote a terribly screwed up play about a screwed up childhood.
Mm.
And I gave it to one of the professors at the University of Illinois who had published the play. And he informed me that I was not a writer, that I would never be a writer, that I had so little talent as a writer that even my children would not become writers. I mean, it was,
shit.
Oh God, it was terrible. And I was ready to throw everything in and
Did
go,
you like slap this teacher's kids or something?
I attract assholes. There's something about my personality. I attract assholes. Well, I threw the play away and it was
about
over.
me.
No, it really was. It was over with.
Yeah.
And
what was the play called?
Oh, I think it was called Reflections in My Father's Eye.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. It was a deep, deep play. Mm-hmm. Written by someone suffering from deep, deep anxiety. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. My saving grace was a wonderful playwright named Milan Stitt. And he had a play on Broadway called The Runner Stumbles, a great play. And he came to campus at the University of Illinois because they were doing his play. And a friend of mine took my play out of the trash, gave it to me and said, you are going to go give it to him. And so I just shy, I would never had confidence, walked up and, asked him to read my play. And he said, he was a wonderful person. He said, yes, I'll read it. I'll read it tonight. I'll meet you tomorrow right here at the same time and tell you what I think. Wow. And the next day he met me and he gave me notes and he said, I think you've got talent. Why don't you come to New York after you graduate and join the Circle Rep and learn playwriting under me and Lanford Wilson. So at 23, I arrived in New York City with $500 in my pocket. I had nowhere to stay. I crashed on a friend's couch for a little while, and then that grew old, and I couldn't find, I told him I had a place to stay, and I went out to the park, and I was going to start sleeping in the park because I had nowhere to go. Mm. And by chance, I found the Benjamin Franklin Transient Hotel on the corner of 77th and Broadway. It's now called the Art House Hotel. It's a luxury hotel, and that's only where I stay when I go to New York. Nice. But then it was a filthy, horrible transient hotel. I mean, I had a bed, a sink, and so many cockroaches that they would crawl on me at night. That would be in my food. It was awful. And I would go in and to the Circle Rep twice a week and listen to readings, and we would go up to Lanford Wilson's house in Sag Harbor, and they would have whole weekends of great playwrights reading their plays and notes. And so I learned from the best. And then finally they read a play of mine. And it was, again, like all early playwrights write about their identity. They always write about their identity. They can't move beyond it. And so I wrote Death of a Salesman meets Desire Under the Elms meets The Last 10 Days of Hitler. All right. I mean, this was it. And good actors. There was a reading, the audience. And about 3 minutes in, someone laughed. And then someone else laughed. And then a group of people laughed. And then there was a guffaw. And I'm sitting in the back row going, oh my God, this isn't happening. And then about 30 minutes in, one of the actors in the reading had to remove his glasses to wipe the tears because he was laughing so hard. When it was over, I had to walk up to the front, and I'm just sitting there completely embarrassed. And the first question was, "You meant this to be a dark comedy, didn't you?" And I was smart enough to say yes,
Mm.
even though I hadn't intended it that way at all. And that's how I found out I could write funny.
Mm.
I had no idea I had a sense of humor until that moment. As I
Wow.
always say, comedy comes from pain.
Yeah.
That's why so many stand-up comedians come from Somalia. Uh,
Oh no.
so sorry, I want to bleep that joke. I tell terrible jokes.
Uh,
Well, I
no,
was
I mean,
wonderful. What? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
it's we could sit here all day dissecting that and then like trying to make amends, but I
Just
think
let
what
it
you're
stand.
saying, yeah, it's I get what the joke is trying to do,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
because it is so it is it's being born out of pain of others, yes,
yeah,
but there's so much truth behind it.
yeah.
Yes, that's why I'm laughing, because that's an uncomfortable true guffaw.
Sorry. I
No,
do
don't
apologize.
apologize.
My humor is
I
cutting
watched
edge.
the horrors of Somalia on TV for a
So
long
sorry.
time, going like, I don't know how to help these
You
people.
see why I get in trouble with my comedy sometimes? Boom.
Yeah. Hey, well.
But yeah, well, I got to tell you, at that time, and another wonderful thing happened to me. I
Mm.
was acting in an outdoor drama down in Alabama in the summer.
Wow.
And I met another theater major at the University of Montevallo in Montevallo, Alabama. And she became the love of my life. And she quit school and moved up to New York and lived in a transient hotel. We had a single bed where we had to put our chairs against the bed with our winter coats, and we'd sleep in our
Mhm.
winter coats. But we went and told her mother and her father in Birmingham that that their daughter was going to run off with a Yankee playwright and live in a transient hotel. Can I give you your audience advice? Don't do that.
Okay.
Write a letter. There's no need. There's no need to confront them face to face with this information. So we went into the house in Birmingham, Alabama, and halfway through, Lucy's mother, Billie Jean, turned to her father, Itchy, and said, "Itchy, get the gun." And Itchy said, "No, Billy, I'm not going to get the gun." And she said, "Well, you're not. I'll get it." And she got up, and walked in the other room, and we could hear her like rustling through the closet and loading one into the chamber. And Itchy turned to us and said, "Well, if I was you, I'd run." And we did. We ran, and we had no family, and
Mm.
we lived. I look back at what she did. I don't know why. It was either stupidity or love, but
Mm.
maybe they're the same thing. But we lived
Sometimes.
as grad students. I remember one weekend, all we had was popcorn and some potatoes to eat.
Mm.
I mean, we were truly dirt poor, didn't see dentists, didn't see doctors. And I just kept learning. And then eventually I got tired of living like a grad student. And I applied to UCLA Film School and
Mm.
I got in. Couldn't believe it. I got in the screenwriting program, and we moved to Los Angeles and found a beautiful little condo, a little bungalow right near the UCLA campus. Had once been owned by Loretta Young. We found love letters that Rakato Montalban had written to Loretta Young's sister in the basement, and contacted him and sent them to him. And I went to film school and got my second MFA. This one I did quite well at. And
Mm.
one day I just made the realization, what am I doing? I like comedy. I like writing funny plays. Put those together,
Mm.
sitcoms.
Mm.
And so I set out to try to become a sitcom writer. And of course, there are no classes in that or anything. And so I just said I'd write one spec sitcom script every 2 weeks for a year. And at the end of a year, I would evaluate, reevaluate, And about a year later, I was at a reading of a play of mine in Los Angeles, and a person came up to me and he said, "You're funny. Did you know that?" And I said, "Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
kind of occurred to me." And he said, "Have you ever thought about writing for sitcoms?" And I said, "I've got 20 spec scripts in my trunk." And he said, "Well, look, my roommate from college, I think is what he said, is the executive producer of a sitcom that everyone will have forgotten. It starred Paul Reiser. It was called My Two Dads."
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, and he said, "I'll show it to him." And 2 weeks later, my agent called and says, "You got a pitch at My Two Dads, so they want to see you." And I went in and got the pitch ready and walked in and pitched. And afterwards called my agent. They said they bought the third pitch. The third pitch that I did in Hollywood was always the seller. And I went home, and you're given 1 week to write. And so
Mm.
it's the pressure is, some young writer apparently turned to some producer in Hollywood and they said, "How long do you need to write it?" And the standard answer is 1 week. And this
Mm.
young writer apparently said 2 weeks. And the executive producer turned to him and said, "Son, I can rewrite the Bible in 2 weeks with jokes." Yeah. Well, halfway through writing it, the phone rang, and it was my agent. She said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm fretting, I'm worrying." I mean, writing comedy is one thing, but writing comedy under pressure is very
Mm.
difficult. And she said, "Well, stop it, get in your car, get over to Sunset Tower Studios. They just hired you as a staff writer." And I went over there, and I got past the gates and was trying to find a place to park. And I looked over, and there was these workmen, they were painting my name on a parking spot. And I went, "Holy shit, this just got real." And so I was a staff writer, and I made a shitload of money, and I hated it. My hair
Mm.
started falling out, and the pressure. I mean, I was at a urinal one day, and one of the other writers came up beside me, and he said, "I'm peeing blood." And he
Wow.
said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Well, go see a doctor." And he said, "I can't. If I leave the room, the comedy room where the writing takes place," he said, the funny thing might be said, and they'll realize they don't need me."
Mm.
And I was there under a screamer, which wasn't good for me. The same guy has produced, I can say his name, but I won't. He still works out there. And
Mm.
just about every sitcom you've heard on is produced by him. But he would burst into my office and just scream at me. And with my childhood being that,
Yeah.
not good, not good.
Mm.
So then I sold a movie to Ron Howard, and another movie came out that was like it. And so it didn't get made. And then I wrote episodes of, I don't know, one of my favorite shows, Amen, with Sherman Helmsley and Fresh Prince of Bel Air. And then one day my wife turned to me and said, "I just got a letter. I've been accepted to the National Theater Conservatory for an MFA in voice, speech, and dialects." And I went, "I've got a reason I can leave."
Mm.
And I hated writing for sitcoms. I thought it was going to be, Buddy Sorrell and Dick Van Dyke and Sally Rogers and all fun and games. And instead they were narcissists and crazy people. And so we moved to Denver. My wife went to the Denver Center and got her MFA in voice, speech, and dialects. And then she became a college professor. And I went back to my first love, which is always playwriting. And then, as you mentioned, wrote the playwriting book, wrote two of them, and a screenwriting book, and an introduction to theater book that's been a cash cow. It's in its fourth edition,
Wow.
and we've moved all over. We've lived in a beach house down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and I was a beach bum. And then until a year ago, I was living up in near Red Feather Lakes in a cabin, and those terrible fires came,
Mhm.
and they twice it came within 4 miles of burning down. We were evacuated and evacuated again, and then evacuated again. And we were down in Denver, and I picked up a paper, and I saw a condo overlooking Cheeseman Park. And I said, "That's where I want to live." And we went over and bought it. And so I don't know how this happened, but we're now living back in Denver again.
Oh.
And I've got a
You're
great
you're
little
my
office.
neighbor.
Where are you?
I'm on like Colfax and Williams. Like I'm right by Cheeseman.
I'm on Humboldt.
Oh man.
I'm on
We got to
Humboldt.
get coffee sometime. Let's
We got
get
to get
coffee.
there. We have right there. I love the neighborhood.
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful there. I mean, I got a crummy little basement apartment, but I love that place. I love the neighborhood.
I
So
love the neighborhood. I
yeah.
found this place, and we walked in, and it's got a 24-foot deck overlooking the park. And I just went, holy shit. I don't care how much. I don't care
Yeah.
how much. And I maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was love, you know.
They're kind of the same thing.
Yeah, so kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no, that's how it became. Um, I've been running away from my childhood now
Mm.
for decades, and it keeps catching up with me. And I desperately want to write the perfect father-son story. And I want to laugh my way out of tragedy.
Mm.
Yeah.
How, with the work that you've done thus far, do you feel like you're close to telling that story?
Well, I just can't. One a play that I worked on many years ago, and then put aside, and came back and wrote another version of it and put aside. This went on for over 20 years, and
Mm.
finally, I went back to it a few years ago, and it's called How to Steal a Picasso. It's my 12th published play, and it's based on one of the original ones. Only
Mm.
now full comedy, but um, no, you don't get over that.
Yeah.
When there's that much violence, um, you have to laugh.
Yeah.
You have to be able to laugh, and so um, that's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I make myself laugh, and it's the only band-aid I've got. Um, when I lose my sense of humor, my childhood will catch up with me. Yeah.
What do you feel like laughing at the things that you need to laugh at? Has that gotten harder over the course of your career?
Oh no, yeah, but what am I drinking? White Claw. One White Claw. I'm a
Yeah.
laugher. Yeah, and I fortunately married someone who has a terrific sense of humor and a very dark sense of humor, and we
Mm.
just we cut each other up
Mhm.
every night. There's some poor comedian. Did you hear there's some poor comedian who did cat jokes only? A couple of years ago, he jumped off the roof of like the comedy club in Los Angeles and killed himself. And
Wow.
I was telling my wife about this, and like reading it to her, and she said, "Did he land on his feet?" You know, we have a dark sense of humor, a dark sense of humor, and we just lay in bed and cut each other up. She came from an equally kind of screwed up family, and so we've been together since we were children.
Mm.
I remember when I first met her, because I was a sleepwalker. I mean, it
Mm.
was so deeply into my psychology that I would get up and talk in my sleep and walk in my sleep. Once,
Mm.
after I met her, I'm in bed with my lovely wife. We weren't married then, but my arm was over her. And at 2 in the morning, she woke up, and I whispered in her ear, "Don't move or they'll kill us," and went back to bed.
Oh,
And she's like, she woke up next
wow.
morning, "Do you know what you did last night?" Yeah, fucked up childhood, fucked up childhood.
Oh, man.
So if people meet me, what can I say?
Mm.
That first play I ever wrote that was read at the Circle Rep, I
Mhm.
was hoping that they would like take up a collection to pay for my psychiatrist, but they laughed instead, and that was the same for me.
Yeah. We were talking before we got into this podcast today, and you wanted to talk about about comedy and how it exists now in the world, and
Mhm.
some of the changes that you feel have been happening around that. Would you care to elaborate?
Yeah, do you notice how afraid we are to laugh at
Yeah.
ourselves? I mean, look at the ancient Greeks. 404, 406 BC, they were in the middle of the Peloponnesian War. There wasn't a single family who didn't have someone die in combat or of plague. They were in terrible shape.
Mhm.
Their democracy was about to end, and yet they filed down to the theater of Dionysus and watched comedies that made fun of themselves. Um, Today, we've lost our sense of humor. And as we lose our sense of humor, mental illness is rising. Look at the younger generation. They're afraid to laugh.
Mhm.
Um, I, I'm worried. Any society that loses their sense of humor and the ability to laugh at themselves, um, they go insane. The United States and Britain were known for their sense of humor at one time. I would write the craziest comedies, and they would be produced. I wrote a comedy called The Exit Interview that won a rolling premiere from the National New Play Network. It was a comedy about a college professor who's laid off by his university, is going through his exit interview, and a gunman enters the building and there's a school shooting.
Mm.
It's a dark, dark comedy. People would produce it. That was being produced like Concord. Sam French published it 5 years ago. It died. People would call me and say, I loved it. I laughed. My wife, I gave it to my wife. She laughed until she was crying. But we can't do it, Bill, because someone might complain.
Yeah.
In the old days, I'd write a controversial comedy, and someone would get up and walk out. And I'd walk up to the executive producer and say, I'm so sorry. And they'd say, screw it. They came to a musical called Fascism the Musical. They were probably good. I did. I actually wrote Fascism the Musical. They didn't think they would be insulted. They walked out, screw them. Today, if someone walks out, theaters are in a panic. They're going, oh my God, what if they have Twitter following? They could get Twitter attacks. We could get, it could get in the papers. We could lose customers. We are afraid to laugh. And we're depending on people with no sense of humor to tell us what's funny. I mean, here's an example. It's not the example of the exit interview is an extreme one, but one of your directors said she doesn't do couch comedies or couch plays, all right, with a couch. There's a couch.
Yeah.
I've written those. I've written them that aren't, but a couch comedy of mine, it was published again by Sam French, and it was called Kosher Lutherans. It was a comedy about a young Jewish couple who can't have children. And they meet a young 17-year-old girl who's pregnant and out of wedlock. She's from Iowa. And they have her over to sign a contract so they can adopt her child. And when the child comes over, pregnant as hell, they realize she doesn't know they're Jewish. And all she knows coming from Iowa is that Jews killed Jesus and control Hollywood. And so they desperately, in order to get the contract signed, pretend to be Lutherans. Okay? I think it's one of my funniest comedies I've ever written. It's a belly laugh. Theater says to me, Bill, Lutherans might be insulted by this. And I said, what, by Jello jokes? I mean, that's about as far as I go. Well, but the Jews in it, they give up their identity. And identity is important today. And they pretend to be Lutherans, and, people that could insult Jews, and I go, they go back to being Jews at the end. After I do every possible Lutheran Jewish joke I can do, it has a happy ending. And no, can't do it. One person. It takes one person to say, that's not funny, and you're dead. And so I'm not being produced quite as much lately. The play that I'm getting produced the most, like 5 or 6, 7 times a year right now, is a comedy called Women Playing Hamlet, about a woman who's been cast as Hamlet. But it's not terribly controversial. The women play all the men's roles. I have Revenge on Shakespeare in it. But it's not a play that you'd go, and it's fun. It's very funny. But there's nothing controversial in it whatsoever. And that's left and right being produced. So here's the problem. Contrast. There are many different types of comedy. There's punch up comedy. There's punch down comedy. Punch down comedy is when people with privilege make fun of people below them. That's been outlawed by our society. There's punch up comedy. This is where people who have less power make fun of people above them.
Mhm.
This is approved by our comedy, by our society, and it can be just as mean as punch down comedy. But there's comedy of contrast. Human beings are unique. We are the only species that we know who can do cognitive dissidence.
Mhm.
No one else can do it. We have the ability to hold two different thoughts in our head. We can look at the world full of death and destruction and horrible disease and children dying of cancer and all these horrible things, and yet also talk about a kind, loving God. That's cognitive dissidence.
Mhm.
Um, and if you think this way and you really go into both camps, you will become very depressed. But we've evolved a mechanism to deal with it, and that is laughter. The same thing, absurdism,
Mhm.
is the same thing. Absurdism is contrast. When you are at a moment in your life where it is most absurd, it's probably because the most extreme contrast is occurring. And what is your reaction? You laugh.
Mhm.
You laugh. My wife and I don't have children. We never had children, but our dogs are our children, and we've had to put two down now.
Mhm.
And the first one I put down, I'd never experienced that. I've cried harder for the death of my dogs than any relative or any friend. And as we came away from the vet and she was no longer in the car with us, strangely, our reaction was laughter. We began laughing at the funny things that Val did. We were
Mhm.
crying through our tears, and it helped us through this moment.
Mhm.
If you cannot laugh, we will have serious, serious mental illness.
Mhm.
Now, it's terrible because I can remember years ago, I don't know if you remember this, some Republican legislatures came up with this thing about 3 strikes and you're out. If you
Yes.
committed 3 crimes, on your third crime, you were sent to prison for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, we got people serving life sentences for stealing a candy bar or something. These damn Republicans, they're so damn awful. Well, the
Mhm.
liberals have topped them. Now it's 1 strike and you're out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Comics used to, they would go to small comedy clubs and they would tell jokes, try out jokes. And it didn't work. They'd get booed. Someone would, shout they're insulted, or they'd storm out and they go, okay, I got to adjust that one. They'd try it the next night at the small comedy club. And someone else would be mad. They'd try it again. And finally they'd hone the joke to where it worked. Then they'd take it to the Tonight Show,
Yeah.
right? Now, with everyone having a camera, you try the joke out, you make a mistake, didn't work. You're recorded, you're on YouTube, your career is over. 1 strike and you're out.
Yeah.
Even comedians don't want to do comedy anymore.
Mm.
Um, we got to stop taking this all quite so seriously.
Mhm. I think
Um,
Ferris Bueller said it best: if you take life too seriously, you'll never make it out alive. Or is that or
yeah,
was that Van Wilder?
I don't
It
remember.
was,
I,
yeah.
I didn't see either
Some
one.
collegiate icon of my youth.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, we are truly. It isn't that we are split politically. It isn't that there's massive differences in wealth. This country has changed more in my life than I think in my grandmother's. And she went from wagons to the moon launch. Um, I don't recognize this country anymore.
Mm.
I don't recognize either political party. Um, and I don't feel safe. I self edit everything I say. I don't talk to people. One of the joys of being a playwright is you get to write about people who aren't like you. It's one of my joys to be able to research and interview and try to stimulate my imagination. I honestly believe that if you talk to enough people, if you read enough biographies, enough philosophy, if you go and live like they do, if you take on someone else's shoes with imagination, you can write dialogue. And I've done it where people walk up and go, "How did you know? How did you know that's my life?" And there's
Mm,
someone who's completely unlike me. Now I'm afraid to talk to other people.
mm,
I'm afraid that I'll make a joke. I'm afraid that I'll say the wrong thing. I'll ask even the wrong question. It's
mm.
best to remain silent and alone. And those are two things I'm good at as a playwright. Simply watch, let the world go, don't get involved.
Mm.
I brought a downer on it.
Wow. No, but I mean, it's a downer, sure, but there's also, I mean, it's a perspective that I've been seeing kind of grow even more and more within myself, of especially over this last year. I've learned that I don't know if it's I've learned or gained the perspective on the people who make me feel rewarded for being who I am. If
How
that's or like
interesting. What an interesting way to
honored.
say.
Yeah, it's like there's a handful of people out there that I know are going to see me for me, and then I give them what I can on a
Can you
schedule
loan them to
basis.
me? Because no one sees me for me.
Oh, I
I would
mean,
love to meet them and maybe I could give them $100 or something.
I was like, I mean, hell, I'll give you all of them if I can have a Lucy. You got an extra Lucy lying around?
An extra
Like
what?
an extra Lucy.
Oh, an extra Lucy. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
No, she's one of a kind.
yeah. I mean, there's there's a certain amount of comfort knowing that I've got that type of support
Mhm.
system. But when life was just happening, right,
Right.
and you were watching, I struggle to say like watching democracy fall apart after 2016. If you're being honest, it was kind of never really there.
Yeah.
There's
It
always
was,
been this. Yeah, I mean, there was a structure,
but
and it was relatively sturdy. But then, as I look back at the history, I realized that the covering of that structure was made out of paper mache.
yeah,
All you had to do was hit it hard enough.
but still, even with that democracy, we could laugh at that democracy.
We
Now,
could.
if you laugh at it, there are people who will threaten you,
Mhm.
you know?
Well, the people like when I was younger and I was made fun of a lot as a kid and for a
Yeah.
multitude of reasons. And one of the things that like I was told to just kind of keep in mind was, well, they're making fun of you for being smart. So keep doing your work. You'll become their boss and they'll be working for you one day.
See, I was the
One,
exact opposite. They were making fun of me because I was stupid.
you know,
Yeah. Which
but
is,
then the thing that happened is like in a lot of those instances,
yeah.
not just for myself, not just for you, but for a lot of us, some of those bullies were able to make connections and then they got jobs
Mhm.
and they carried away. I mean, like this guy in LA that is trying to make art, but he's so up his own butt about the process in which he thinks he's involved in that
Are
he's got
you
to
saying
destroy a
that?
playwright on a daily basis is
Oh, yeah, but
ludicrous.
sitcoms aren't art.
Yeah.
Sitcoms, I couldn't stand it because, the characters were set.
Mm-hmm.
You wrote from an outline. None of that's fun. Um, yeah, I mean, when I left, I had a panic attack because I kept thinking, I I remember the year I moved to Denver from Los Angeles, and my pay fell so badly that when I went in to do my taxes, they asked, "Have you had a major illness? How could your pay fall from that level to this level?"
Mm-hmm.
And I panicked, but in the end, it worked out. I was happy that I left.
Yeah.
I have gone back. I've optioned a couple of years ago. I optioned a TV pilot, and I'll go back now and then. But um, I I don't know. Sometimes I feel like playwriting is becoming just as censored as
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood. And Hollywood is a heavily censored town.
Mm-hmm.
If you're working on, I don't know, try to think of a sitcom, King of Queens, which is no longer on, but if you went in and pitched an idea in which the guy who works for UPS, whatever his character's name was, that he forms a union and the union works beautifully, all right, and it's an episode in which they discover that unions are a great thing,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to get that episode produced.
Yeah.
The huge corporations that own the sitcoms are never going to allow that on. And
Mm-hmm.
so you self-censor ideas in Hollywood. You know there's no sense in even pitching them. And I think that's true in playwriting today too. You self-censor. I self-censor jokes. I self-censor ideas. And I go, it'll never be produced if I really state an idea. No, I'm not talking about racist, homophobic bullshit. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about just basic ideas
Yeah.
that you
Like
can't
just
see.
questions about the system as a whole.
Yeah, and the system's big.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Where do
yeah, I
you
didn't mean
feel
to
you're
bring it.
most
Okay, I'll tell a
free?
joke because you're all depressed now.
All
So
right.
I'll
Let's
tell a
tell a
joke
joke.
to pick things up. All right. These
All
two
right.
psychiatrists, all right. Two
Okay.
psychiatrists are heading back into the city after a long weekend. And one turns to the other and says, I had a terrible Freudian slip at my mother's house. And the other said, what happened? He said, well, I turned to my mother and I meant to say, would you please pass your delicious hot crust buns? And instead I said, you ruined my life, you bitch. My favorite joke. My favorite joke. My favorite Freudian joke.
I got a joke. This
Okay.
is an old one. And I'm not going to say stop me if you've heard it because I want to tell the joke. Um, so there's this architecture firm and they're running out of money and they're not getting a lot of clients. There's no contracts coming in. A lot of people are finding that the ideas that they've been coming up with are getting stale. So it's kind of like this Glenn Ross moment. The boss brings everybody in and he goes like, listen here, everybody, we're losing money fast. And if we don't pick up any clients by the end of the month, I'm going to make some dramatic layoffs. All right.
Mhm.
And this one guy, Steve, takes this really to heart. He's got a wife, he's got 2 kids. This is important to him. Being an architect is the only thing that matters to him. So he calls his wife and says, babe, I'm not going to come home tonight. I will see you in the morning. I've got to go out and I need to be inspired. So that's just what he does. He hangs up the phone, he hops in his cab, and he just gives the guy a blank amount of cash just to take him all over town so he can look at other ideas, look at other buildings, look at the world around him and become inspired to create something new and amazing to get a contract to keep his job. And it's not going so well. And it's getting late and he's exhausted. And they're driving back to the office so he can hop in his car and go home. And right before they get to his office, they drive past this beautiful hotel that just went up. It's magnificent. It's 80 stories into the air. It almost defies logic that something this grand could exist, that he just now noticed it. He pays the cab, he hops out and he walks into the hotel. And the lobby is immaculate. There's marble flooring everywhere. It's gold. It's beautiful.
Oh
He's
no.
he's blown away by the grandeur. He's blown away by the grandeur. He
Mhm.
walks up into the lobby and there's a little bar area. Goes to the bar and he orders himself a scotch. Bartender gives him a scotch. He sits there for a little bit, just soaking it all in, the scotch, the surroundings, the ambience, if you will. And eventually, before he finishes the scotch, he brings the bartender over to him and he slides him a 20 and he goes, "Thank you for the drink. I'm about to head out. Could you know if like the owner is available? If you got a way I could reach out to the person that designed this building?" And he goes like, "The owner? Oh yeah, he's at the end of the bar." He was like, "Oh." Then Steve looks over at the end of the bar and there's this guy in a beautiful suit, hangdog face, just sipping his whiskey. Looks like he's been there for a while, but hey, he owns the place. He doesn't have to drive anywhere, right? So Steve sends him a drink, buys another, and walks on down. And so he goes, Steve walks up to the owner of the hotel and he goes, "Sir, this building is amazing. It's breathtaking. I would love to hear what inspired you? Where did you find the angles and all these things? And the guy goes like, listen, I can't tell you much except that I build the building so high in the air that you can jump off the top and you float right back on. It's fucking defies gravity. It's amazing. And so Steve is very skeptical. He's a man of math and science. That's not possible. And he says, whatever, man. Are you sure you can't give me anything beyond this obvious lie? And the guy goes like, all right, fine, fuck you. I'll show you. And so they take the drink and they hop in the elevator and they go all the way up to the top of the hotel. And this is great podcast stuff, this long, elaborate joke. So stay with me. So Steve and the owner of this hotel hop out and they're on the roof. And the owner finishes his drink and then jumps off the edge of the building and hovers out over the street, 80 floors in the air, and floats right back on top. Steve is blown away. He goes, he's still a little skeptical. He doesn't know what's going on. And he dares him to do it again and take a bigger running start this time. So the owner goes like, fine, fuck it, I'll do it. And he runs a couple of laps. He gets up some speed and he jumps even further out over the street below, 80 floors below. And then he floats right back on top. Steve is convinced that this works. This absolutely works. So he downs his scotch, takes a couple of laps, and then jumps off the roof and boom, splat, dead. Ambulances come. The owner of the hotel climbs down, answers a few questions, and goes back to the bar at this lobby hotel bar. And the bartender walks over and brings him his drink. And eventually all the ambulances leave and everyone walks away. And the bartender walks over to him and says, you know what, Superman, you can be a real asshole when you're drunk.
All right, now just a little lesson about comedy. The longer the setup,
yeah,
the bigger joke they expect, you know.
Oh yeah.
And I mine was a setup payoff. Yours was a setup payoff. Yeah.
So what you're telling me is don't quit my day job.
You know, I don't know. I can't. I think people are born with a comedy gene.
Yeah.
And there was that moment for me in that theater where I went, holy shit, I'm funny. And I get the timing of a joke. So I don't know what it is. I'm glad I have it because it's maintained sanity, if in fact I am sane.
Yeah.
Which is plenty of doubts about. But I want your audience really to think about what they consider that isn't funny. Because what they consider isn't funny is probably where they're insecure. I mean, look at the man who walks into a bar and he sees his buddies, but his marriage is on the rocks. And his buddies say, hey, you're going to join us for a drink. What happened? Did she kick you out of the house tonight? And he says, no, why would she kick me out? What are you talking about? Look at the man who's secure in his marriage. He goes out for a drink that evening, walks in, his buddies say, hey, she kicked you out of the house? Yeah, she can't stand me. He can joke about himself.
Yeah.
And if you can't joke about it, there's probably something, in my opinion, that isn't fully mature about you in that area. You're not fully developed yet. Look at young religions that can't laugh at themselves.
Yeah.
Older religions can often laugh at themselves.
Yeah.
As you gain confidence of who you are, your sense of humor develops.
Yeah.
And as a result, I think we have a lot of very insecure people about their identity, who they are, what they want to be. And it's tough to be in the theater with insecure people. You know, we should be the most secure.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
We get up in front and make idiots out of ourselves.
Bill, you brought up an interesting point, and I want to ask you if you feel comfortable answering. With your childhood, is there something you yourself are insecure about, making jokes about before this new world of censorship developed for you? Was there something you wouldn't touch on?
Dogs. I'm a dog lover. If you told a joke about, executing a dog, I could probably see myself, unless it was really funny, It would have to be pretty damn funny. A great payoff. But yeah, I could see myself going,
Mm.
but I don't believe in my lifetime I've ever uttered the words, "That's not funny." Although I thought about it with the joke you just told a moment ago, but I censored myself. I'm so sorry. If the joke hits me, I've got to say it,
No. That's the perfect response to that joke.
I do
My
apologize.
favorite thing about telling that joke is that I like to make it longer and longer and longer. I've
Really?
never given the guy a name before, so this is the first
Can
time
I
I gave him a
advise
name.
against that? It's just, if you go to an act break with it, it's too long.
So you've got me there.
I'm
You do
sorry.
got
I'm
me
just
there.
teasing. I'm
No,
joking.
don't
You laugh.
apologize.
Mhm.
I can usually take a gentle rib now and then.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
But our
got me.
situation on this earth is absurd.
Mhm.
We are absolutely, the writer Will Durant, Will and Ariel Durant, some of my favorite writers, the historians, said that if we really looked at our situation on this earth, we'd hang ourselves from the nearest tree.
Mm.
Nietzsche said something very similar, saying something like, we need art in order not to kill ourselves. It's not a direct quote, but it's in the ballpark.
Yeah.
We need laughter in order to survive this absurd existence.
Mhm.
And those who are saying, again, I'm not talking about homophobic, misogynistic, racist bullshit. I'm not talking about that.
Mhm.
But those who cut off the joke and are afraid to even laugh at our situation on this earth, um, um, they're driving us closer to insanity.
Mhm.
And you can see it, the young kids today, their mental illness. So I've read someplace, it was in the New Yorker or something like 50% report mental problems and mental illness. And every
It's
young
hard.
person I meet walks up to me and they go, yeah, I saw my psychiatrist. And I'm like, when I was growing up, we never mentioned that. That was hidden. And I'm like, why are you telling me this?
Mhm.
Can I tell you a joke? Can I make you laugh for a second? And they just, you can see their sphincters tighten. you know you
Oh yeah.
can't laugh if your sphincter is tightened all the time. It's directly contrary to laughter.
That's how I act. I know I'm lying on stage when my
Yeah,
butt gets tight. I'm just like,
yeah,
oh,
my butt gets tight.
yeah.
Oh yeah, you need a loose sphincter in order to really have a sense of humor.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
I heard
that's
bran helps.
what does.
Bran, a lot high fiber diets, everybody. I cannot stress that enough. Stay
Yeah.
regular, stay happy, keep laughing.
Keep laughing.
Yeah.
And God, if I hadn't laughed, what I've been through,
Hmm.
you know. One thing that's amazing that's happening to me lately is I'm getting produced overseas.
Oh.
I was I was in a farmer's market and my phone rang, and it was a woman with a thick a German accent, and she
Mhm.
said, "We like your play." I was like, "What? Hello? We like your play. Your comedy is very Jewish. Are
Hmm.
you Jewish?" And I'm like, holy shit, what is this? And my wife is a voice and dialects expert, and I couldn't understand, so I handed it to her because she could get any dialect, and turned
Mhm.
out to be a legitimate theater in Vienna,
Mhm.
wanting to translate a play of mine into German. And I
Wow.
flew to Vienna, and Lou and I saw it. I'm funnier in German, apparently. But I went to South Korea and saw a comedy of mine there. I saw a comedy of mine in Spain. Just last month, I had a comedy of mine in Russia. And so that's comedy is usually more limited to a particular country.
Mhm.
What's funny to us is not funny in France,
Yeah.
you know. And I've now been produced in 14 countries, and I'm rather amazed. So I think absurdist comedy, what I write,
Mhm.
not jokes, translates to other languages, which comforts me that there's some some hope that other people are realizing that they have to laugh at the absurdity of life.
Do you find, with all that you've accomplished and built for yourself, here
Yeah.
coming across those personalities that seem to want to deny everything about you at crucial junctures of your life, did you ever go like, yeah, what now? What now, college professor? Like,
No, I
or
took
does that not exist for you? That form of
I,
ego?
every single note they gave me, every time they told me I was a failure, I took it dead to heart.
Mm.
Every bad review, I go home and cry, but I'm very persistent. Um, I write every day, and as soon as I start writing again, I forget the criticism.
Mm.
And um, no, I mean, I remembered them in this. They haunt me. I mean, I was standing in my sophomore year in high school. I was standing in the shower after gym class, and the coolest kid in the school walked up to me, and he was standing right next to me, right here, and he said, "How you doing, Bill?" And I said, "Fine." What? And everyone in the shower started laughing, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And I looked down, and he was peeing on me.
Oh.
You know, that happened to me when I was 16 years old. I remember it exactly, and I know his name. And every now and then, I think about wild, wonderful bits of revenge. And usually it's funny revenge, and it makes me laugh, you know?
Yeah.
No, I'm not immune. I think playwrights, it's hard for playwrights because, we give it up. We walk away. A good playwright does, at least.
Mm.
Um, and actors will, I've had actors screw up a play, directors screw up plays. I've had them save plays also. And then, of course, the review comes out. What is it? The director's local, the actors are local. So what does the critic do? Who the hell is this playwright? That must be the one. They attack the playwright. And I've had some bad reviews and some horrible moments in the theater where I mean, it was so bad I couldn't get air into my lungs,
Mm.
and I had no control over the production. I had no say, and I call Lucy, and she's very comforting, and then I get up the next morning and write.
Yes.
Um,
Back at it again.
I'll tell you the story of the worst thing that ever happened to me in the theater.
All right.
I went to a theater. It was outside of New York City, and they didn't have money. They said they couldn't fly me in. But just before the play opened, they said, "We've got a patron donate an airline ticket. We're flying you in." And I went, and it was a comedy. And it was one of those where the first joke got a laugh, the second joke got half a laugh, the third joke got half that, and after that, the play went right into the toilet. Audience fell out of it. And then the actors tried to go over the top, trying to bring the audience back, which of course sunk it. Well, at intermission, I walk out into the lobby, and they've put up a picture of me, a life-size picture saying "the playwright." And of course, I want to be the playwright. I want to hide. I don't want people to know I'm the playwright. I want to listen to conversations about the play. Well, I walk out into the parking lot, and there is a traffic jam of cars, a massive traffic jam of cars trying to get out. That's when I saw the bar across the street. And so I missed the second act. I went across the street, and in 45-minute second act, I drove up an $89 bar bill. I was drunk out of my mind. Now, they had put me up at a house, a beautiful, wealthy person's house. It was 4 stories tall. I had the loft at the very top. And when I left to go to the theater that night, they said, "Here's the key. Look, we're going into New York for tonight. So just let yourself in, take anything you want out of the refrigerator, and we'll see you in the morning." Right? So I stagger home, drunk out of my mind. I mean, nearly pissing my pants drunk.
Oh.
I open the front door. I walk in. I'm so drunk, I'm dehydrated. I go into the kitchen. I open up this beautiful, absolutely massive refrigerator. There's a thing of water. I take it out. I close the door, and sitting there in the darkness at a little kitchenette is the wealthy family's 16-year-old daughter, who they forgot to tell that I was spending the night.
Oh no.
And she starts to go, oh my God, oh my God, who are you? Who are you? And I'm going, oh my God, I said, I'm harmless. I'm a playwright, And she says, I'm your parents. I'm staying here. I'm with the theater. And they go, what are my parents' names? And I'm like, I'm so frigging drunk. I can't remember.
Oh.
I met them for 2 minutes. They handed me a key and left. Well, at this point, I got her calmed down. I said, my suitcase is upstairs, my suitcase. I went up. On the second level, the 17-year-old son came out with a baseball bat. Yes, and I had to go through the whole thing again. I finally went upstairs, fell asleep. I left the next morning, take the train back into the city, and picked up the New York Times, and it said my play. Oh, the New York Times was there. I forgot to put that part in. It said the play was unendurable, and they were right. It was unendurable. And I in the next morning, after I sobered up, I wrote. Yeah. So I've had chest pains. I was at a theater once. The play was so bad that I started having angina. And I was like going, I think I'm having a heart attack. It's a comedy. Do they know what cue pickups are? Oh, for God's sake, pick up your cues, So I don't go to my plays very much, and I don't go to rehearsal unless I'm asked. And I try to let the theater company do their thing and walk away and go, give me the royalty and let me take my wife out to dinner and we'll laugh at dinner tonight.
Oh man. Is it hard to separate yourself from your work normally?
Because I hated being an actor because I had to ask permission to do my art. I heard that said on several of your podcasts. They don't like having asked permission through the rehearsal, through the audition process. I get to practice my art every day. I was laughing. I was laughing my ass off this morning, writing a colostomy bag joke. I gotta say, it's genius. It's friggin' genius. I don't know if it'll go into the work in the end, but at least I was laughing at it.
I'm here for it. I worked in hospice care for 5 years. I know all the ins and outs.
Yeah.
So to speak.
If you had a colostomy bag, you got to laugh about it.
You really do.
Yeah. It was a joke about a webinar for colostomy bag survivors. And I was laughing pretty hard. And that's what I like it. I have two moments when I'm writing that I love. I love when I write something, and as I say, I don't write jokes, but when it's funny, when the absurdity of life, and I laugh and I go, okay, there it is. And the other moment I call the crying moment, where I suddenly the theme comes clear. It's usually around the 5th or 9th draft of something. I suddenly start crying for an uncontrollable reason, and I suddenly realize what the play is about, what its purpose, what my subconscious has been trying to tell me. And I love those moments, those quiet moments at 3 a.m, when the house and the world are quiet, and it's just me and the computer screen and the characters, and they're talking to me, and life is good.
That's an amazing. I loved hearing that perspective on your process. How else does it manifest for you? Does a voice, a joke, a situation in life come to you and then you just start writing?
Yeah, I don't follow scenarios. I don't write outlines. I come up with a little bit of dialogue and add to it and add to it and add to it. And surprises occur. I write myself into corners. I love to write myself into a corner where there's no way out. It's a failure. Because if I can write my way out of it, then I know I came up with a unique twist that the audience never saw coming. I start every day on page 1, and I rewrite until whatever page I'm on, and then I go back to page 1. If I'm on page 98, I rewrite from page 1 to page 98, and then add page 99. So it's a laborious process. The only advantage I have as a playwright is I'm willing to put in time. And I think a lot of people don't realize that if you added up all the time that all the actors spent auditioning and rehearsing and performing the play. All the time the director spent directing, all the time the lighting designer, costume designers, everyone made the costumes. If you added up all that time, all those human hours to put that performance up, the playwright put more time in than every other person in the theater combined for a single production.
Mm.
So it's a very time consuming process.
Yeah.
Filled with failure. All right, I've been talking too long.
Oh, well,
We've talked for an hour and 10 minutes.
This has been great. I've been loving hearing
Very kind.
just everything. Well, I mean, I talk to actors and I talk to directors and the occasional stand-up comic, maybe a stage manager here or there. The perspective, the voice that I've been trying to get that I haven't gotten to yet is the person that gives us the words to speak and to hear about the journey that you've gone on, where your voice comes from, what you're afraid about is continuing your career. Like
I'm
all of
worried
those,
about it.
these are real things, and I'm thankful that you shared that with me.
As a matter of fact, I'm so concerned about it that for the first time in 25 years,
Mhm.
I've written one play a year for 25 years, one full-length play a year. This is the first time in my career since for 25 years that I'm not writing a play.
Mm.
I'm currently working on a novella. I think it's going to be a novel. It's got 180 pages now, so I think it's getting closer to a novel. Because for the first time in my life, I have a backlog of comedies.
Mm.
I never, once I wrote a play within a year, 18 months, 2 years tops, some theater would pick it up. It'd win a playwriting contest. It would win a rolling premiere from the National New Play Network. Something would happen and it would get done. And now I've got a backlog of 3 plays. And I went, interesting. Something has fundamentally changed. And so I'm trying something a little different. Let's see if I can. So if anyone out there is looking for a comedy, I've got couch comedies, I've got absurdist comedies, I've got you name it. I've written everything from kabuki plays to sitcoms, and everything in between. And you're looking for a playwright who's easy to work with, i.e., doesn't show up unless directly asked, and wants to do maybe a world premiere in Denver. Wouldn't that be great to do a world premiere of a local playwright and something funny? Here's my philosophy. I think I go to the theater too often, and when I get done, I'm exhausted. Mm-hmm. I'm tired at the end of plays. And I think when a play is over, you should be hopping, skipping out of the theater. Even if it's a tragedy, you should be full of life. Mm-hmm. I went to see Crucible a couple of years ago because a friend was in it, and I 3 hours later my ass was asleep, and I've seen Crucible, I've read it, I've known it all my life, and I'm sitting there and it was like every other damn production of Crucible. And as I walked away from the theater, suddenly I was hit by joy. My heart lifted because it occurred to me that I'm old enough now that I'll probably die before I have to see Crucible again.
We're gonna do the Crucible at Miners Alley later this fall.
Shit.
And I'm now gonna send you an invitation.
Shit.
Because I
write a comedy version of it for you.
Perfect. Bring it on.
I will. I'll write a comic version. Crucible with Joe. Come on, you got to admit.
Yeah.
You got to admit, plays like that would be much better. The Death of a Salesman. Yeah. Come on, that would make a much better comedy.
I mean, with you.
There would be a long speech at the end where Willy Loman apologizes to his sons for giving them such stupid names, mm-hmm. Biff and Happy, and mm-hmm. and he would turn to his sons who are now named Ian and Ben, and they'd get into the car and tell jokes and drive off and crash into a tree, but they died laughing. That would be a much better play.
I'm with you. I'm playing Giles Corey.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So if you want to write the Crucible through the perspective of Giles Corey, this old curmudgeon. Let's go. Let's effing go.
All right. All right. I see. Okay. Rather, we'll cut that out. That's the part we'll edit.
Rubik's Cube.
Rubik's Cube. Cut it out. All right. We should cut this off because people have listened way too long.
Well, then let me ask you.
Yes.
What is that ghost light you wish was left on for you when you started your career? That piece of advice that you'd hand down to the next gen.
I found that things went best when I didn't have a plan. When I didn't set goals. I am going to be such and such by this date. Then I was open to things happening. When I didn't try to look, I mean, I've been very, very lucky because a lot of young playwrights, they're a flash in the pan. They come out of grad school and they're hot. They get the big play that goes to the regional theaters, and 5 years later, you never hear from them again. And I've been lucky to have a 30-year career that's been slow, but absolutely steady with productions. And I think it's because I always concentrated on the day, not the overall plan. The artist Banksy, he said, "You don't eat a meal so you can take a shit." You know, I love taking my wife out to dinner. I don't turn to her and say, "Hey, sweetheart, you know, I need to take a dump tomorrow. Let's go out to dinner." You're getting things confused if you do that. So if you're constantly thinking what the goal is, instead of writing a great line of dialogue, creating an interesting character that an actor loves to play and a director loves to direct, and just let that be your purpose for today, and let the long-term stuff take care of itself, then the long-term takes care of itself.
Absolutely.
And I started off so poor, and now I live in a beautiful condo, and I'm got royalties and residuals, and life is good because I worried about the line of dialogue, the rehearsal, not the finished product. It took care of itself. Never have a plan.
Never have a plan.
Never have a plan.
Bill, Mr. William Missouri Downs, the man, the state, the legend. Thank you so much for sitting down with us.
God, I wish it wasn't Missouri. You know, I wish it was a more liberal state. You know, wouldn't it be? You know, like William, I don't know, Massachusetts Downs. I think that would be better. You know.
There you go, I love it. I'm here for it. William California Downs.
Yeah, California Downs. I like
there
that.
You go.
Call me Cali for short.
Definitely. Ladies and gentlemen, ghosties, thank you so much for joining us. In the words of Van Wilder, don't take life too seriously. You'll never get out alive. In the words of Ferris Bueller, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. That's my Matthew Broderick impersonation. Keep laughing. Please tell your friends to subscribe and enjoy the Ghostlights podcast. And do yourself a favor. Look up William Missouri Downs. Read some of his work. It'll definitely bring a smile to your face. Dan, do the damn thing. I'm going to hit you up for the very least to take a walk around Cheeseman with our dogs.
Absolutely. Yes.
Perfect.
Mine's 14 though.
Mine is 8. No teeth.
Okay.
And I'm getting a tumor removed off his butt. It's got to happen.
Good.
You just laughed at a dog joke. Got you. I got you.
Yes.